The massive space station hung in the darkness above Centauri Prime, like a glittering jewel. Inside its crystal halls, beings from across the galaxy gathered for the most important meeting in thousands of years. Elder Vordak stood at the center of the great chamber, his forearms spread wide as he addressed the crowd. "My fellow council members," his voice boomed through translators, "we face a crisis unlike any in our history. The humans have been among us for only 30 years, yet look what they have done." The holographic displays around him showed images from dozens of worlds. On Kalara Prime, workers were holding signs and demanding better treatment. On Vega Station, crystal singers were creating music that expressed individual feelings instead of group harmony. On the Bracken mining worlds, laborers were asking why the noble families got rich while they stayed poor. Chaos, Vorhak hissed. Pure chaos. These humans spread dangerous ideas wherever they go. They tell others that any being can rise above their natural place in society. They speak of something they call rights that belong to individuals rather than the state. They question everything we have built. Ambassador Lee Min-ho sat in the defendant's chair, watching the alien faces around him. Most looked angry or afraid. A few seemed curious. Beside him, his aide Park So-young was taking notes on her tablet, but her hands were shaking slightly. Min-ho had known this day would come. Ever since humans had first made contact with the galactic community, there had been tension. Humans were different. They asked too many questions. They refused to accept that some beings were naturally meant to serve while others were meant to rule. In just 3 decades, Vordak continued, 17 civilized worlds have experienced what humans call social revolution. The Yilthri now hold elections instead of following their hereditary leaders. The Bracken have formed worker cooperatives. Some species are even questioning the wisdom of this very council. The chamber erupted in angry chittering, growling, and other sounds of distress. The idea that anyone would question the council was clearly shocking to most of the representatives. "Order," Vordak commanded. "The evidence speaks for itself. Wherever humans go, they leave behind seeds of rebellion. They teach others to think for themselves instead of accepting their proper place. This cannot continue." Ambassador Min-ho stood up slowly. The chamber fell silent as all eyes turned to him. He was a small figure compared to many of the alien representatives, but his voice was clear and strong when he spoke. "Honored council members," he began, "my people came to the stars seeking friendship and knowledge. We shared what we knew freely. We learned from you gladly. If teaching others to ask questions and seek better lives is our crime, then yes, we are guilty. Guilty of destroying the natural order." Vordak snapped back. "Your species refuses to understand that stability requires hierarchy. Some are born to lead, others to follow. Some species are advanced, others primitive. This has been the way for millennia." "Has it?" Min-ho asked quietly. "Or is that just what you tell everyone to keep them in line?" The question hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Several representatives shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Others looked outraged at the suggestion. Park So-young watched the faces around the chamber carefully. She had studied galactic politics for years, and she could see the fear in their eyes. These beings weren't angry because humans were wrong. They were angry because humans might be right. "You see?" Vordak pointed one of his clawed fingers at Min-ho. "Even now, even facing judgment, they question and challenge. This is exactly the poison we must stop from spreading." The debate that followed was brief and one-sided. Representative after representative stood to condemn humanity's influence on their neighbors. The Keth-Mori spoke of ancient traditions being abandoned. The Centauri complained about decreased productivity as workers demanded fair treatment. The Vorthan Empire worried about their subject species getting ideas about independence. When the vote was called, Min-ho already knew the outcome. The numbers appeared on the great display. 846 votes to ban humanity from all galactic territories, trade routes, and communication networks. Only one vote against the ban, from a small species called the Mirren, whose representative sat quietly in the back corner. "The matter is settled," Vordak announced with satisfaction. "Humanity has 6 months to withdraw all citizens and assets from civilized space. After that, Any human found outside their home system will be arrested and their ship destroyed. As the session ended and the representatives began to file out, Park So-young leaned over to whisper to Minho, "Sir, what do we do now?" Minho watched Vortex speaking to a group of enforcement commanders, probably already planning how to make sure the ban was enforced. The elder alien looked pleased with himself, clearly believing he had solved the problem. "We go home," Minho said quietly. "We pack up our people and our things. But ideas, So-young, ideas are different. You can't pack those up. You can't ban them or arrest them. Once they're out there, they have a life of their own." As they walked toward the exit, neither human noticed a small Mirran representative watching them with large, thoughtful eyes, nor did they see the data pad she was using to record everything that had just happened. The council had made their decision. Humanity would be exiled, but some seeds once planted are impossible to destroy. Dr. Kim Jamin looked around his laboratory one last time. After 12 years on Kalar Prime, everything he had built was being packed into metal boxes. His research equipment, his notes, his life's work, all of it would be loaded onto the transport ships heading back to Earth. "This is not right," said Zilta, his young research partner. The Kellerite 6 arms moved nervously as she spoke. "Your medical discoveries have saved thousands of lives. The treatments you developed work better than anything our doctors had before." Jamin smiled sadly and pulled out a small data crystal. "Then keep the work going," he said, pressing it into one of her hands. "Everything is on here. Not just my research, but the ideas behind it. Human medical philosophy. The belief that healing should be available to everyone, no matter who they are or where they come from." Zilta's large eyes grew even larger. "But this is forbidden now. If the council finds out, then don't let them find out," Jimin said quietly. "Share it with doctors you trust. Make copies. Spread the knowledge." Across the galaxy, similar scenes were happening on dozens of worlds. On Vega Station, engineer Choi Doon was saying goodbye to her crystal-singing colleagues. The vegans had worked with her for 8 years, learning new ways to build and design things. "Your departure makes no sense," said Holnara, her voice creating beautiful harmonies even when she was upset. "The life support systems you helped us create are 30% more efficient. Our people breathe cleaner air because of your work." Doon handed her friend a small device. "This contains the blueprints for even better systems. But more than that, it has the principles behind the designs. The idea that technology should serve all people, not just the wealthy ones." Holnara looked at the device like it might explode. "The council will execute me if they discover this." "Only if you let them discover it," Doon replied. "But think about all the vegans who could benefit from cleaner air, better water, safer buildings. Are their lives worth the risk?" The evacuation ships were crowded and sad. Millions of humans packed their belongings and said goodbye to alien friends they might never see again. But mixed in with the humans were other passengers, aliens who had embraced human ideas and now faced punishment from their own governments. Captain Han Boare stood on the bridge of the transport ship New Hope, watching as families filed aboard. Some carried suitcases and personal items. Others carried something more dangerous: data pads, books, and memory devices filled with human knowledge. "Captain," her communications officer called out, "we're getting a request from a group of young Bracken. They want passage to Earth." Boare looked at the screen showing the mining world below. She could see council enforcement ships taking positions around the planet. Soon, any alien caught with human materials would be arrested. "How many?" she asked. 47. They say they've been studying human labor organization methods. Their families have disowned them, and their government has marked them as criminals. Boare thought for a moment. Her ship was already overcrowded, and taking alien refugees might anger the council even more. But these young Bracken had risked everything for an idea. The idea that workers deserve fair treatment and safe conditions. "Tell them to come aboard quickly," she said. "And tell them to bring whatever materials they have with them." On the planet's surface, Yang Soo-jin was finishing his own goodbye. As the foreman of Mining Station 7, he had reduced workplace accidents by 90% using human safety protocols. Now he was handing those same protocols to Voltar, a young bracket engineer. The council wants us to go back to the old ways. Voltar said bitterly. More workers will die. Not if you don't let them, Sujin replied. These safety measures aren't just rules on paper. They're based on the idea that every worker's life has value. Every being deserves to go home safe at the end of the day. That idea is more powerful than any council decree. Voltar clutched the datapad tightly. But how do I convince others? How do I make them listen? Sujin smiled. Start small. Save one life, then another. Show them that there's a better way. Ideas spread when people see them working. As the last human transport ships lifted off from civilized space, council observers reported success. The contamination was contained. The dangerous humans were gone. Order would be restored. But they couldn't see what was really happening. In hidden corners of laboratories, workshops, and homes across the galaxy, small groups gathered in secret. Kellerite doctors studied human medical texts. Vegan engineers experimented with new designs. Bracken miners shared safety protocols with their colleagues. Commander Thelvor of the Council Enforcement Fleet reviewed the withdrawal reports with satisfaction. All human presence has been eliminated from regulated space, she told her superior. The threat has been neutralized. What she didn't know was that on her own ship, a young communications officer named Zildok was quietly copying human encryption techniques. The methods would make it much harder for the Council to monitor subversive communications. As the human ships disappeared into hyperspace, heading back to their home system, they left behind something invisible but powerful. Books hidden in false walls, data crystals disguised as decorative items, memory devices small enough to hide in jewelry. Most importantly, they left behind changed minds, beings who had tasted freedom and equality and found they liked the flavor. The withdrawal was complete, but the real damage was just beginning. 5 years had passed since the last human ship left civilized space. Elder Vortak sat in his office, reviewing the latest reports with a satisfied smile. Trade efficiency was up 15%. Social unrest had dropped to almost nothing. The natural order of the galaxy had been restored. Excellent news, he told his aide. It seems removing the human contamination was exactly what we needed. Everything is back to normal. But on Kalara Prime, normal was the last thing happening. Deep in the abandoned mining tunnels beneath the capital city, Zilta huddled with 12 other researchers around a glowing screen. The forbidden data crystal Dr. Kim had given her years ago had led to discoveries that changed everything they thought they knew about their own people. Look at these bone samples, whispered Zilnok, a young archaeologist whose career could end if they were caught. Our ancestors weren't simple farmers like the history books say. These skeletons show signs of advanced medical procedures, cybernetic implants, genetic modifications that we can't even do today. Zilta felt her heart racing as she stared at the evidence. But that's impossible. The Council taught us that we were primitive until they found us and helped us develop. The Council lied, said another researcher quietly. We were already advanced, maybe more advanced than they were. Similar discoveries were happening across the galaxy, hidden from Council eyes. On Vega Station, Honara had used human musical theory to experiment with crystal harmonics. What she discovered by accident changed everything. Certain frequencies could activate ancient vegan technology that had been sleeping for thousands of years. The old songs weren't just music, she explained to her secret study group. They were activation codes. Our ancestors hid their technology in plain sight, disguised as cultural traditions. When the ancient devices came online, they revealed star maps, scientific databases, and historical records that told a very different story than what the Council taught. The vegans had once been explorers and inventors, traveling between stars before the Council ever existed. On the Bracken mining worlds, Voltar was making his own shocking discoveries. The human engineering principles Yang Sujin had shared didn't just make mining safer. They revealed that the primitive structures their ancestors built were actually marvels of advanced engineering. These tunnels aren't random, he explained to his secret meeting of miners and engineers. They follow mathematical patterns that we're only beginning to understand. Our ancestors built a transportation network that spans 3 solar systems. Each new discovery led to more questions, more investigation, more dangerous thinking. And slowly, the truth began to emerge. Every primitive species in the galaxy had once been advanced. The Council hadn't been wise protectors. They had been systematic destroyers of civilization. The underground networks began connecting. Using human encryption methods that Zildok had learned and shared, researchers on different worlds started communicating in secret. What they found when they compared their discoveries made them sick with anger. The pattern was always the same. Advanced species would be discovered by the Council. Their leaders would be invited to join galactic civilization. Then, slowly, their technology would be declared dangerous or unstable. Their histories would be rewritten. Their people would be taught that they were naturally inferior and needed guidance. They lobotomized entire civilizations. Zilta said during one encrypted communication with researchers on 7 different worlds. They took away our past, our pride, our potential, made us believe we were nothing without them. Commander Thelvor began noticing problems around the same time. Her reports showed decreased productivity on mining worlds, equipment malfunctions at monitoring stations, small acts of rebellion that seemed to be spreading. When she investigated a disturbance on Kazan, a minor mining planet, she found something that chilled her blood. A mixed group of species, Kellerites, vegans, Bracken, and others, working together on some kind of dig site. They scattered when her ships arrived, but they left behind evidence that made her realize the situation was much worse than anyone knew. Books. Hundreds of human books translated into 17 different languages. Technical manuals on engineering, medicine, and computer science. Political texts about freedom and individual rights. Historical accounts of how oppressed peoples had overthrown their rulers. "How long has this been going on?" she demanded of her intelligence officers. "We're not sure, Commander. The encryption they're using is unlike anything we've seen. It seems to be based on human methods, but modified and improved." Thelvor studied the confiscated materials with growing alarm. These weren't just random rebels. They were organized, connected, and learning from each other. Worse, they were using human ideas to rediscover their own forgotten histories. She sent urgent reports to the Council, but the elder members dismissed her concerns. "A few malcontents reading forbidden books," they said. "Nothing that can't be handled with proper enforcement." But Thelvor knew better. She had seen the look in the rebels' eyes when they ran from her ships. It wasn't fear, it was determination. They weren't just reading about freedom. They were planning for it. The underground movement was growing stronger every day. Secret meetings in abandoned buildings. Encrypted messages passing between worlds. Ancient technologies being reactivated by species that supposedly didn't understand them. The humans had been gone for 5 years, but their most dangerous export was still spreading. The idea that any being could think for themselves, question authority, and choose their own destiny. Elder Vorthak thought the threat was over. He was about to learn how wrong he was. The breakthrough happened on a Tuesday, Galactic Standard Time, across 49 worlds simultaneously. Young beings from dozens of species, connected through quantum-encrypted networks they had built using human cybersecurity methods, accessed their true histories all at once. On Kalara Prime, Zilta stared at her screen in horror. The ancient data files her people had uncovered told a story so terrible she could barely believe it. Her hands shook as she read about the great Kellerite civilization that had once spanned 12 star systems, with cities that floated in the clouds and ships that could travel between galaxies. "They destroyed everything," she whispered to the other researchers crowded around her. "The Council didn't find us living as simple farmers. They made us into simple farmers. They bombed our cities from orbit, then rewrote our history to make us forget we ever had them." Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. On Vega Station, Honara wept as she learned that her people had once been master builders who created structures from pure sound and light. The Council had poisoned their world's crystal formations, the source of their advanced technology, then told them they were naturally primitive. On the Bracken mining worlds, Voltar read about his ancestors' vast underground cities and their mastery of gravitational engineering. The Council had collapsed their great works with targeted seismic weapons, then enslaved the survivors in the very mines built on their civilization's ruins. The pattern was the same everywhere. Every member species of the Council had once been advanced, proud, and free. The Council's elder races, the Kethmoris and Tari and Vorthan, had been wise guardians bringing civilization to primitive worlds. They had been conquerors who destroyed civilizations and rebuilt them as slave states. "We have to tell everyone," Zilta said, her voice shaking with rage and determination. "Every being in the galaxy needs to know the truth." The message went out through the underground networks at exactly midnight, Galactic Standard. It was simple, direct, and devastating. "We were never meant to kneel." Along with those words came evidence. Thousands of ancient records, archaeological discoveries, and scientific analyses that proved the Council's lies. Videos showing the ruins of great civilizations. DNA evidence proving that primitive species have been genetically modified to be weaker and more compliant. Star charts showing the true extent of pre-Council civilizations. The response was immediate and explosive. On Kalara Prime, workers walked out of factories and demanded answers from their government. On Vega Station, crystal singers used their voices to shatter the monitoring devices the Council used to spy on them. On Bracken Worlds, miners emerged from deep tunnels carrying weapons their ancestors had hidden centuries ago. But this wasn't the chaotic rebellion the Council had always feared. This was something new and more dangerous, organized resistance based on shared knowledge and coordinated planning. Each species adapted human concept of freedom and justice to their own culture, creating diverse but united movements. Commander Thelvor watched the reports flood into Council headquarters with growing panic. Rebellion on 23 worlds. Work stoppages on 41 more. Ancient defense systems being activated on planets that supposedly didn't have the technology to operate them. How is this possible? She demanded of her intelligence staff. "We've been monitoring these worlds for centuries. They don't have weapons or military capabilities." "Apparently they do, Commander," her aide replied nervously. "The Kellerites just activated a planetary defense grid that our sensors never detected. The vegans are using some kind of sonic weapon that disables our equipment. The Bracken have tunneling machines that can appear anywhere without warning." Elder Vorthak received the emergency reports in his private chambers. As he read about uprising after uprising, his 4 arms trembled with rage and fear. Everything the Council had built over thousands of years was crumbling in a matter of days. "This is impossible," he roared. "We control their technology. We monitor their communications. We've kept them weak and divided." "Not anymore, Elder," his aide said quietly. "They're working together now, sharing resources, coordinating attacks, using tactics we don't understand. And, sir, they're not just using their own rediscovered technology. They're using human methods, too." The final straw came when Zilta's broadcast reached every populated world in the galaxy, using transmitters hidden across dozens of planets. She spoke directly to billions of beings in their own languages. "My fellow citizens of the galaxy," her image appeared on screens everywhere. "We have lived as slaves to a lie. The Council told us we were primitive, that we needed their guidance, that some beings were naturally meant to serve while others ruled. But the evidence before us proves otherwise. We were all once great. We all once soared among the stars as equals. They took that from us, but we can take it back." The uprising that followed made the earlier rebellions look small. Entire solar systems declared independence from Council rule. Species that had been enemies for centuries united against their common oppressor. And at the center of it all were the ideas that humans had planted years before. The belief that any being could rise above their circumstances and choose their own destiny. In desperation, Elder Vorthak made the decision that would seal his fate forever. If the human ideas were spreading like a plague, then he would destroy the source of the infection once and for all. "Prepare the war fleet," he commanded. "We're going to Earth. It's time to end this madness by eliminating the species that started it." But when the Council fleet reached the edge of human space, they found something waiting for them that would change the galaxy forever. Admiral Li Jinwu stood on the bridge of the Earth Defense Force flagship Liberty, watching as hundreds of ships from across the galaxy formed a protective wall around his home planet. The sight took his breath away. Vessels from 67 different species, all flying together in defiance of the Council's ban. The sleek Kellerite research ship True Seeker floated alongside the crystal-hulled Vegan Harmony vessel Eternal Song. Massive Bracken engineering craft bristled with mining equipment that had been converted into weapons. Dozens of other species he barely recognized had sent their ships to defend Earth. "Admiral," his communications officer called out. "Incoming transmission from the Council fleet." "Put on screen," Jinwoo replied. Elder Vorthack's reptilian face appeared, his forearms spread in a gesture of authority. Behind him, Jinwoo could see the bridge of a massive Council dreadnought, surrounded by hundreds of enforcement vessels. "This is Elder Vorthack of the Galactic Council fleet," the alien leader announced. "All vessels will disperse immediately and return to your homeworlds or face destruction. You are in violation of Council law by defending these criminals." Jinwoo smiled calmly as he opened a return channel. Around him on the bridge stood representatives from the allied species, Zilta from Kalara, her 6 arms working at control panels, Holnara from Vega, her crystalline body glowing with inner light, Valtar from the Bracken Confederacy, his rock-like features set in determination. "Elder Vorthack," Jinwoo said, his voice steady and confident. "You've made a fundamental mistake. You thought you could ban ideas the same way you ban ships or weapons. But ideas don't obey borders or respect authority. They spread when beings find them useful, and they take root when they offer hope." "Enough philosophy," Vorthack snarled. "You humans have poisoned the minds of civilized species with your chaotic beliefs. The natural order must be restored." "Natural order?" Zilta's voice came through the communication system, her tone filled with righteous anger. "You mean the order where you destroyed our civilizations and made us forget our own greatness? That's not natural, that's slavery." More voices joined in from the allied ships. Holnara spoke of her people's stolen heritage. Valtar described the underground cities his ancestors had built. Representative after representative told their stories of loss, rediscovery, and awakening. "You see, Elder," Jinwoo continued, "the damage you were so worried about was never to galactic civilization. It was to the chains you used to bind it. We didn't teach these peoples to rebel. We helped them remember who they really were." The standoff stretched for hours. The Council fleet was larger and more heavily armed, but they faced something they had never encountered before, a truly united resistance. Ships that should have been enemies, according to Council doctrine, flew side by side, sharing tactical data and coordinating defenses. Then something unexpected happened. Ships from the Council fleet began breaking formation. "Admiral," Jinwoo's tactical officer reported, "we're getting surrender signals from 37 Council vessels. They're requesting permission to join our formation." On the communication channels, voices began speaking out from within the Council fleet itself. Young officers and crew members who had learned the truth about their own species' hidden histories. Beings who had grown tired of enforcing a system built on lies and oppression. Commander Thelvor of the Council Enforcement Division, requesting permission to come aboard. Came one transmission. "I have evidence of war crimes committed by the Council leadership that I wish to share." Elder Vorthack watched in horror as his own fleet dissolved around him. Ships that had served the Council for centuries suddenly turned their weapons toward his flagship. His own crew began to question his orders. "This is mutiny," he screamed over the communication channels. "I am your lawful commander." "No," came the reply from Captain Zildok, who had once served on Thelvor's ship. "You are a war criminal whose authority comes from lies and murder. We choose not to serve you anymore." The battle that followed was brief and decisive. Outnumbered and abandoned by Moses' fleet, Vorthack had no choice but to surrender. His flagship was boarded by a mixed crew of humans and aliens working together, something that would have been impossible under the old system. 6 months later, representatives from hundreds of species gathered in a new kind of assembly, not the rigid hierarchy of the old council, but a true confederation where every world had an equal voice regardless of size or military power. Dr. Kim Jin-min returned to Kalar Prime, not as an exile but as an honored guest. Engineer Choi Doon established the first interspecies technical academy, where beings from different worlds could share knowledge freely. The galaxy buzzed with cooperation, innovation, and the sound of ancient chains finally breaking. In the new assembly hall built in orbit around neutral space, Zilta stood beside Admiral Jinwoo as representatives debated the future of galactic civilization. Around them, beings of countless species argued, laughed, and worked together in ways the old council had insisted were impossible. "Do you think it will work?" she asked him during a break in proceedings. "This new system where everyone is equal?" Jinwoo watched a group of young beings from a dozen different species collaborating on a research project, their differences making them stronger rather than dividing them. "It already is working," he replied. "The damage is done. The galaxy will never go back to the old ways." And in his prison cell, Elder Vorthak finally understood what the humans had really brought to the stars. Not chaos, but choice.